Hey, Tom here from the Run Testers. In this video, we're going to be doing our full review of the Diadora Gara Carbon 2. Let's have a look at this shoe. The Diadora Gara Carbon 2 costs £250 or $300. It weighs 208 grams or 7.3 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 5mm. The Gara Carbon 2 is a premium carbon plate race shoe designed to compete with the big super shoe players. It combines a full-length carbon plate with Diadora's ANIMA PEBAX midsole, a supercritical PEBAX SCF foam compound that aims to lower weight and deliver 80% total energy return. Diadora states that the plate uses extreme curvature to promote maximum thrust and propulsion on both road and track, as well as minimising energy loss due to the plate's enhanced rigidity. The upper of the shoe is made from the brand's carbon fibre matrix mesh to be both supportive and lightweight, and on the outsole is a layer of Duratec 5000, a higher wear resistant rubber that the brand says is better than standard shoe rubbers.
Comes to the fit of the Diadora Gara Carbon 2, it's been all good for me in my normal running shoe size. I've got enough room in terms of length and width around the toes, but also had a good secure lockdown around the midfoot. Even as someone with quite a narrow foot, I never found that my foot was moving around too much. The upper's pretty comfortable, I'd say all round. There's a bit of padding around the heel of the shoe, but it's not overbuilt, there's not too much structure. It does remind me a bit of the feel of the Asics Metaspeed series at the back of the shoe there, where it's padded and comfortable, but still, very lightweight and breathable. So in general, no concerns really at all with the fit, and I would stick to your normal running shoe size.
So the fit for me in the Gara Carbon 2, really spacious, comfortable shoe. I'm a size 8 in the UK, this is a size 8. Plenty of space before the big toe, which is not often the case with performance level carbon plate race shoes, I find. Plenty of space around the sides of the foot, and the midfoot's pretty comfortable as well. So overall, it's actually a relatively roomy shoe for me around the whole of the front of the shoe. It's also pretty easy to get a nice lockdown fit in, despite the fact that it's quite a comfortable fit. I had no issues at all in the 60k of running I did in this shoe. Found it to be really, really comfortable, and it's got these fantastic laces on as well that really tie nice and tightly. And I've raced twice in this shoe, and I had no issues with the laces coming loose or anything like that. So it's definitely stay to your size in the Diadora Gara Carbon 2. So this is the second shoe I've tested from Diadora. I've never used a Diadora shoe before, and obviously it looks like they're putting quite a lot of effort into their running shoes at the moment. The Diadora Carbon 2 is an interesting one because I think it's got a lot of elements that really show that Diadora are doing the right thing, but also I think that it's still a little bit behind some of the other shoes out at the moment, which isn't surprising because obviously Diadora doesn't have a really long line of carbon plate race shoes. They haven't been doing this for a long time. So in the second version, it's good, but it's not quite up there with some of the top tier ones that many of us talk about on the channel. So I've used this for a couple of races now, and the reason I used it for a couple of races was that where I live, a lot of the races tend to be a bit multi-terrain, and I'm never entirely sure what that means on some races. Sometimes it can mean it's like a trail, depending on the weather. Sometimes it's basically just a road race. Those ones that I did this in were basically road races with a bit of trail in, but it was really, really dry. So I decided to use this because my history with race shoes is not very good on road. I tend to rip off the outsole quite a lot. So I decided to use this because I'm probably not going to use this for many other races if I'm going to go for a PB. Now the reason for that is I find it's got a lot of elements which are fine for as a carbon plate racer. It feels like it feels like lightweight on the feet. It feels like it's a fast propulsive shoe, but not as much as most of the other carbon plate racers that I test. So the midsole foam in this is very good. It's quite soft, but I don't feel like it's got loads of energy return in. I think the actual benefit you get from it is quite minimal out on the run. It feels relatively fast, but it doesn't feel like you're getting loads of energy return off the back of it. Same goes for the carbon plate. It's not particularly aggressive carbon plate. You don't really notice it. It's definitely not a slow shoe, but it also, when you compare it with lots of other carbon plate shoes out there, it doesn't really do as much or feel like it's giving you as much back as those shoes. The other thing I would say about the shoe is that I've ran up to 12 miles in this shoe, and I found it to be really comfortable for that distance because it's a very natural feeling shoe. It doesn't feel aggressive in any way, and for a lot of people I think that's probably a good thing. You could probably liken it to something like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, which is a very natural shoe that ticks a lot of boxes for people like me who, when I'm running a marathon, I like a shoe that feels a little bit more natural, especially in the later stages, because I do find that it can make it hard for me in the latter stages. So I prefer a more natural feeling shoe that gives me a bit back in a more natural way. So it's not nowhere near up there with the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 for me, but it's got similarities to it. It feels comfortable on the feet. It doesn't feel overly like it's moving your foot into a specific position. And overall, for a marathon, I think it'd be a very comfortable shoe to wear, and probably the sweet spot for this shoe. For short distances, I just don't think it's got the pickup. I don't think it's got the nimbleness of many race shoes out there. If you compare it with shoes like the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0, it just doesn't feel like it's as poppy as that. It doesn't feel as fast as that shoe. Things like the Vaporfly 4 as well just feels lighter on the feet, quicker at those shorter distances. So for short distances, even though it says this is a track and road shoe, I don't think I'd use it for track. I just don't think it's as quick as some of the other shoes that I've got. For those, but for long distances, I think it's probably a nice, comfortable option that a lot of people may like. The outsole, pretty good. I mean, I've been running on multi-terrain, rocky, muddy, varied gravel surfaces, and it's absolutely fine. So I've done about 60k in this shoe so far. No sign of wear or tear on it. I actually really like the outsole on this. The front bit's really, really good, nice and grippy, and it's holding out on my ability to destroy these shoes. So pretty durable for the outsole for a race shoe. So probably a good option for marathons from that perspective as well.
On to run test then, I've done about 50k of running in the Diadora Gara Carbon 2 across a mix of hard training sessions in general. I've done one session on the road, doing a couple of 5ks, with one of them being an all-out park run. I've done a 22k long run in the shoe, and also a track session running 400 meter reps at a mix of different speeds. And I've enjoyed running it all round. It's a comfortable, cruisy carbon plate shoe. It sits much more at the more relaxed end of the spectrum, the more marathon focused shoes, I would say, and the more comfortable carbon shoes all round. You don't really have that really aggressive rockered feeling that you're getting with some shoes these days, where they cut out the heel. They've gone the opposite way. Instead of cutting out the heel, they've extended the heel on the shoe to give it quite a nice smooth ride that does have a nice bounce. I think this ANIMA PEBAX foam is impressive. I think it does give you a nice amount of energy return, but at the same time, I think the shoe maybe lacks a little bit of the edge and speed I want from a racing shoe, especially if you're looking at shorter distance events. And after doing quite a lot of training in it, I'd be very happy to keep using it for lots of training runs, but I wouldn't necessarily look at it as a top racing option myself. Maybe a little bit similar, actually, something like the Hoka Cielo X1, which had a really nice vibe to pick up and use every day, and was fast but still pretty stable and comfortable, but I think lacked maybe a bit of top end speed and agility. Like I say, you have got quite a natural ride here. I think a lot of people appreciate that. It's not a very stable shoe, but it's more stable than some of the options out there. It doesn't have that squishy feeling of something like the Endorphin Elite 2, or the really rocketed feeling of some shoes. And I think I enjoyed it probably most during all my testing. It was on that 22k long run, where I wasn't really going for a really hard pace, but was just controlling a pretty good pace throughout and just rolling along in the shoe. And it did eat up those miles really nicely. It gives a nice amount of energy return without feeling too weird or crazy underfoot. But at the same time, it does have the speed here. Like I said, I did those 400 meter reps in it. It can certainly handle those higher speeds, kind of 5k speeds. I ran a pretty solid park run in this shoe, and my first kind of hard effort back after the Seville Marathon. Time certainly in line with my performance in other super shoes at that park run and that kind of thing. And you are getting a very fast ride here, and I think it's one that will suit lots of different runners, because it isn't so unnatural, it isn't too weird. I think you can step into this and not feel too crazy when you're running around in the shoe, but it is giving you, that level of extra performance you get from a carbon shoe with a high class foam and the carbon plate in there. It's just necessarily doesn't feel quite as light, or it isn't as light as lots of carbon shoes out there, but doesn't feel quite as light, as aggressive and racy as lots of the other options on the market, especially at the time when the market is veering a bit more towards lightweight shoes, with the Meta Speed Sky Paris, Vaporfly 4 being very lightweight, the Puma Fast R Elite 3 being very lightweight. And I think this feels a bit more kind of cruisy, comfortable, nice option for a marathon for sure, with a lot of comfort there, but it doesn't feel as edgy and racy as I personally like in my racing shoe. But I do think it will appeal to lots of people who are looking maybe for a more easygoing shoe that does give you a lot of speed. Price then becomes a bit of an issue for sure, but if you are looking for a carbon plate racing / training shoe that's going to pick up a lot of training runs at a range of speeds, I think it's a very strong option that you could consider. So my verdict on the Diadora Gara Carbon 2 is it's a very enjoyable shoe to test. I really enjoyed running in it. It's not one I would buy myself. I don't think it stands toe-to-toe with the very best carbon plate racers, especially if you're looking at it as an all-distance racing shoe, the one that you're going to use for 5Ks. If you're just looking explicitly at the marathons, it does have a lot of appealing features. It is comfortable. It feels quite natural. I think it rolls through very smoothly. But even there, I think it's a bit heavier and lacks the real dynamic punch you get from some of the best shoes on the market right now. And then we come to the price, which is, I think just too high. I think it's very high in the US, it's still high in the UK, and you're just looking at more established better shoes coming in cheaper is what I would say. So things like the Asics Meta Speed Sky Paris, my favourite overall racing shoe, is cheaper. Just be a one I'd definitely pick up. And if you view that as too lightweight and not supportive enough for the marathon, then there's something like the Adios Pro 4. Again, is cheaper than the shoe and just delivers, I think, a faster, punchier ride for events of any distance, but including the marathon as well. Even dropping down to around the £200 mark, there's things like the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB, which I think are really impressive all-round racing shoes. I'd rather have on my feet if I'm going to go for a PB than this shoe. Part of the appeal here, I think, is the fact that you can use it for a lot of training as well, because I do think it's a pretty well-balanced carbon plate shoe, but that almost detracts from it for me, because I want my carbon plate shoe to just be used for fast sessions, then to go out and race in, to have that aggressive feeling, and especially if you're looking at such a high price. So I think it's a tricky spot, because Diadora's got some good stuff going on with the shoe, definitely. It's a good foam, carbon plate works, really nice upper. All round, it's a really well-built shoe, even quite a good-looking shoe, and I think if you bought it and you really liked it and want to use it, it will serve you very well as a racing shoe. I just think it lacks a little something compared to my favourite racing shoes, and the price is very high. And if you are a brand who's more on the outside of this area, coming in, you're trying to make a splash, I think going in with such a high price, I think is a difficult way to do it, unless your shoe really is going to blow everything else out of the water, and I don't think the Gara Carbon 2 does that. I think it's a good shoe and a fun shoe to run in, but it wouldn't be my top choice. And then to be more expensive than brands that are seen all the time on the feet of elites and have been used by runners for many years, just means it's going to be hard for it to carve its space out. But yeah, certainly a good shoe, impressive racing shoe, just not one of my top picks. Wouldn't be the one I'd go for, but if you do pick it up, I think you're going to enjoy running in it.
Okay, my verdict on the Diadora Gara Carbon 2, I think it is a alright carbon plate shoe. I think for some people it's probably a very good carbon plate shoe if you're looking for that natural feel and you're not looking for aggressive, really overt feel from the plate and the foam. But if you're looking at it as a competitor to something like the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0, Vaporfly, the Alpha Fly 3, all those shoes, it just doesn't seem to have as much as those shoes do, which is understandable because Diadora is fairly new to doing this. So I think it's probably a solid option if you just want comfort and a little bit of energy return in your shoe. But the problem comes down to the price, because I think for the price of this shoe, you can get far better options out there at the moment. And if you just wanted to get comfort and a little bit of energy return and a bit of carbon plate benefit from your race shoes, there are cheaper shoes out there that are probably a bit better. Things like the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, I would say is a better option. There's a little bit firmer, but not massively. Things like that, I think, would be a better option than this shoe, because it's very expensive for a relatively entry point shoe where the brand hasn't got a long lineage of doing this. So I think fine on most counts, but I just don't think it competes with some of the top tier options out there at the moment. And unless you were going to get this considerably cheaper, I would definitely go for another shoe over this for the price. That's from us on this review of the Diadora Gara Carbon 2. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and click that little bell. And if you're going to catch them below, you can find it into our podcast, which comes out a couple of times each month. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.